All right, AI adoption across large organizations usually fails, and it's not because of teaching their teams how to use AI. And we're going to talk about why that is today. Um, my name is Gregory. I worked at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory for over 14 years, and I've helped land 2 rovers on Mars. And this year, I've been focused a lot on doing fractional chief AI officer work for a bunch of companies. I learned a ton. I realized this industry is still new. I've contacted a bunch of other CAIOs, and everyone's still trying to figure it out. So I wanted to share my thoughts of my experience and what is actually happening and what's the best way to adapt AI across large organizations. I think this all starts with a lot of boards are asking their CEOs to make sure that they use AI in their company. And of course, in these board meetings, CEOs will just say, like, most of the time they'll say, yes, we'll do it. We need to catch up. We were behind, or we don't want to fall behind. But in execution, that is so ambiguous. Like, what does that mean? And I'm seeing organizations just increase token budget, getting AI tools, but I think it's very hard to understand, like, what is the goal and how do you measure the organization relative to that goal. I do think that AI adoption across large organizations is really a human change management problem and not really a technology problem. Most of these organizations I work with have engineering teams, and all these engineers are really smart. They don't need to know how to learn how to use AI. So let's see, I got some notes here. So I think one of the biggest things that we need to understand is going to an organization is first going in there and understanding how they're currently working, and then identifying what the goal is to adapt AI in the company over 3 or 6 months and so on. And so the problem is no one really knows where they currently stand. And what I've seen so far, which is great, people on the team have different teams have different initiatives. Some people will take the initiative to host seminars, or people will be chatting on their teams or Slack channels. But there's not really a kind of central guidance in terms of what it means to adopt AI. So as I mentioned, I don't think tools is the problem. It's really just, again, understanding what the current infrastructure is, what the team has access to, how do you go about rolling out an AI adoption plan across hundreds, if not thousands, of team members. How do you get feedback from people along the way, because it's not going to be a perfect science? What metrics are you judging the productivity on AI adoption on? Like, these are all things that are very nuanced, and so that's kind of what I've been solving over the past year or so. As mentioned, I worked at JPL for over 14 years on 2 Mars rovers, and similar to that, there were hundreds, if not thousands, of engineers there, and it required a lot of kind of large-scale adaptation and change. And so I really took that systems-level thinking skill set and organization into doing this for mid-market companies or enterprise-level companies to help them understand how to best adapt AI. So when going into an organization, I think a structure that could be used for chief AI officers is coming up with these AI adoption pillars. You could use either one is methodology, and so especially for engineers doing software development, there is a design lifecycle, different phases, different levels of detail, but essentially it's ideation or design, and followed by writing the code or actually building the code, and then the testing and reviewing. And when you go into the organization, you need to establish what is AI's responsibility in each of those areas of the life cycle. And okay, we're adapting AI now, but is it really moving the needle? And in order to do that, you need a baseline. And so you can work with your organization to understand an infinite amount of metrics to track by, right? It could be like number of pull requests, or it could be like cycle time. But the key is going to be knowing that these will change. You'll learn more and more about what metrics work or doesn't work, because you'll be comparing these metrics to, let's say, token usage or cost of tokens. And it's hard to tell whether or not using AI means you're more your team is more productive, or in fact, because they're using AI, it's causing more AI slop or more bugs. And so that's going to be kind of an iterative process in terms of how do you know what the right thing to do is. In large organizations, again, I mentioned there's like a lot of different materials out there, whether it's local chats within the company or maybe FAQs on a certain repository. I've seen other companies have their own internal AI with questions with the knowledge base of their companies, which is really, really useful. But again, I think there needs to be a central source of like tools and education. Like the team should really understand what tools can we use in our company and where can we go for resources. A healthy thing to do too is establishing maybe like office hours, maybe once a week, and people who run those office hours rotate so that not one person is really responsible for that. And maybe having dedicated people monitoring a channel where people can chat questions generically or specifically. And then, there's all these resources that need to come together. Also with adoption, this is a very complex thing to work on, if not months or over years. And so when you come up with a methodology in your company, I think the way to roll that out is through like beta testing on smaller groups. And so you can probably grab that, whatever infrastructure you guys come up with for AI adoption, pick like a select few of champions or groups or pods that are more enthusiastic about AI, and then roll out this methodology and then test it, see what they'll do it for a few weeks or a few months, and then get feedback from them. Because I think most of the time there's a direction or a mandate or something like that that says, go use AI, and there's really no feedback loop. And I think the feedback loop is very, very important. Also, something very important to consider is security. And so in these large companies, privacy and security is very, very important. So I think working with like the chief information security officer is very important to understand what are the boundaries of the tools that the company has, what are the safeguards, what are the guide rails that one can put up. Does everyone in the company know what they can and cannot do in with the AI tools? What kind of data can they put in the AI tools? I think those are all questions that need to be established for each organization. So getting more into the details here, I think a very important aspect about considering AI usage during the design lifecycle. I think AWS has their own AI design lifecycle. And, some version of this is when you're coming up with a feature or a piece of code that you want to come up with, you can chat with AI and brainstorm that. I think a lot of people, we only know what we know based on our experience, and AI is a chance to help expand that bubble, because there's always things that we're not thinking about because we don't have that experience. And so it's good for brainstorming the ideas for what code you're trying to write. And then for the most part, you could probably leverage AI to write almost all the code and test almost all the code and review all the code. But in general, it's probably best practice to make sure that there are different agents doing each of those things. So one agent writing the code, a different agent testing the code, and a different agent reviewing the code, because you wouldn't want the same agent just doing the same set of work, because then it's not really, it's less likely to check itself. So that's something to kind of keep in mind as you're using AI across the organization. Again, there's a variety of like how much do we use AI in terms of should we build a skills library that everyone can use, or who can build the skills library? Is there some sort of change management and approval process for which skills or skill libraries can be used? These are all things I think that has to be worked out during the time of the organization. Okay, so when choosing metrics, this is super tough because, there isn't really a perfect metric. And I think if you choose something like number of pull requests or cycle times, there are several quantitative metrics you could choose, but there's always going to be a quality aspect, right? So just because your team's output is more with AI, does that necessarily mean that AI was better because you were more productive? Like, what if you produce more output than you usually do, but that output caused more bugs or more slop or more review on the back end? And so as you're progressing through the chief AI officer role, you'll need to figure out what are the right metrics, and are we looking at the right metrics, and are we looking at the right angles of those metrics, and are we comparing it to the correct other metrics? So that could be, token usage or overall cost of AI, or if you want to look at are we spending more on tokens and AI and reducing the amount of spend of number of actual engineers, and then trying to figure out what is the quality aspect of these metrics that really matter when we're adopting AI. In the realm of tools, I think something that has to constantly try to figure out is like what tools are available, and do you use different AI tools for different use cases? Are you using one tool for planning, or are you using another tool for actually writing the code? And then also usage, right? Like who has a certain amount of token usage? Who approves getting more tokens? How do you like disperse the tokens usage across the team? Like what if one person barely uses AI, but one person keeps going to their limits? You want to kind of meter that as well. And so that's something that also is constantly being figured out in these larger organizations is which tool are you using and how much do you use it? And how do I make sure we're enabling the people who want to be using AI against the people who aren't really that enthusiastic? All right, something extremely, extremely important, I think doesn't get talked enough, is security and privacy. So typically with large organizations and these companies, they have client data to be sensitive to or about. And so I think there needs to be like a governance body or person that really says, hey, here's the type of information you can and cannot put while you're using AI. Like, do not put these sensitive pieces of information. There also needs to be an authority or a group authority that people can go to, whether it's just asking questions like, can we do this? Can we use this tool? Or an organization that really protects the company data, right? So data is a huge part of AI. Make sure working with the chief information security officer to make sure that all of the correct agreements are in place with the third-party tools. And so I think that's a whole other thing that needs to be factored into the adoption of AI, because I think there are some organizations who just kind of sign up and give their team like enterprise level accounts for different engines, and there's not really an agreement in place in terms of protecting like NDA or protecting their data. So I think there's a whole process there of approving what tools come through in terms of the adoption of AI and what is relevant. There's almost an AI tool for almost every any use case nowadays. And so is there like a process where team members can go to an authority to say, hey, can we grab this tool? Making sure that they know they're not supposed to just install any AI tool into their laptop, because that could put the company into detriment. And so I think that's another thing that's part of the process of adapting AI, is understanding how do you incorporate more and more tools that are being built into your company to increase profit. So how do you show the board that you're actually adapting AI in your company? I think what I've seen sometimes is organizations goes off and like gets the software or tools or tokens, and they just say, all right, team, go use AI. Maybe there's direction about how to go about this. But the thing that is missing again is the baseline, right? How do you tell your board that things are working or not working? And I think if you're just having people use AI over 1 or 2 quarters and there's nothing quantitative to show for, it's not really an indication of if this is helpful or not. And so, and also too, I think it's better to start because this is still an art. I don't think any organization has figured this out at like as a science yet. And so I think if you just start, you'll learn more and more in your organization about, are these the right metrics? Is this the right methodology? And then adapt accordingly. Because, this may never be perfect because the environment is changing so much. So we need to understand how the team and people are adapting AI and how effective that is. So I would recommend just starting, keeping track, and have a very focused effort to understand how things are moving within your organization. Yeah, I've noticed that there are a lot of chief AI officers out there that are full-time. And I can imagine that is a huge effort, right? I mean, whether it's an engineering team or human resources or finances or all of the above, it's just a huge effort to kind of give the resources about enabling AI within a company. Although there are some value with doing a fractional chief AI officer, which is the function that I do. Fractional CAIOs, obviously, you don't have to worry about a full-time hire, but also I think it's more focused and more surgical, because then the fractional chief AI officer can work with the CTO and the rest of the leaders to be able to really dedicate the time that's needed to come up with the infrastructure and the education and the methodology and the metrics. And it's kind of like a very tactical role to be able to figure this out and be agile as well. So that's something that I think is very useful to have a fractional CAIO, especially in mid-market and enterprise level companies. Okay, so I kind of gave an overview of kind of the things that I've been working with other companies, and I think I want to continue the series by getting a little more detail of kind of what we've uncovered, what we've learned, and I just want to kind of give the broad overview of the challenge here that I'm seeing across a lot of organizations. And I think the more interesting thing is what we're finding. So stay tuned for the next video. And if you want to learn more, reach out to me. My link to book a call with me is on the website.